And there we are. Welcome. Hi. Whoa.
Hello.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
How can't complain. How about you?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
In this country, we say pretty good considering. Uh, and
Right.
now let me introduce you, and then I'm going to let you
Yeah.
take over. Uh, will everyone mute themselves but us?
Yeah. So,
Uh,
how you
well, there's
doing?
lots. Now I'm going to try and find out who is talking. We all good here. Um, Doug, will you unmute yourself? I'm going to introduce you while you unmute yourself. Doug, we're happy to welcome Doug Holder today, who tell you about.
Right.
Doug received a citation from the state of Massachusetts for his work as a publisher, poet, professor, and editor. And it's been written of him that he's a major league talent. And I want to just tell you a little bit about all those things that are quite amazing. Uh, that, that I've been reading your latest book, your collected poems, The Essential Doug Holder. That's a great name. Uh, The Essential Doug Holder, New and Selected Poems. And
Yeah. My publisher said that would be a good time. I didn't think so, but and it came out during COVID, so they said the essential workers and all this. I didn't know what the hell it was, but anyway.
isn't it a great title? Uh,
Yeah.
uh, it's like uh, you know, what's really important about you,
Right.
because there is so much poetry that you've written, but and I don't know when you managed to write it all, because here you have founded the Ibbotson Street Press, and you're the arts editor of the Somerville Times, and I was going to go through all four of uh the different hats you wear, and it's pretty amazing how many things you're doing all at once. The teaching, writing. Uh, I, I remember that you were a counselor for 30 years at McLean's. Uh,
Uh,
it's been a really interesting experience as well, that you're going to talk about it maybe. And uh, for me, this interview is going to be a cinch because you've interviewed so many poets and writers in programs like Poet to Poet, and other programs that really are wonderful. You should all go on YouTube and look up Doug, and you see all these different things that really made it very worthwhile for me to invite you, because now I can just sit back and relax and let you talk. There's so much. You're so good as an interviewer that I could have you interview yourself, uh, and not make all the wrong things. Let me start.
oh.
Let me start with one thing. Since we're coming from the Middle East, I'll tell you something about the poet, the writer, Naguib Mahfouz, the Egyptian writer, who uh oh, excuse me. See, I'm getting too many things coming in that are uh not part of this. So the poet Naguib Mahfouz, writer, he never left Cairo, and he won the Nobel Prize. When you sit in Cairo, you see that there's so much to write about, so many people. And I see this in your work, that, there's so much, you see so much that, that how could you leave? There's so much to write about right where you are. Would you like to tell us something about that for the beginning.
Yeah, I tell my students, I said, you really don't have to go to a mountaintop in Tibet in order to get, fodder for your poetry, have some sort of intense spiritual experience. For me, someone, Alan Kaufman, I don't know if you know him, he wrote Jew Boy and all that.
Oh yeah.
He said my poetry reminds him of Resnikov, who used to walk around the streets and record common everyday things. And so, I'm not well traveled in any sense, but there's a plethora of stuff to write about in my town of Somerville, which is right outside of Boston, and in Boston itself, and the various places that I've lived. Something as simple as a hat means so much more than a hat. And maybe it's your father's hat, or it's your mother's hat, or whatever, and it has different aspects to it. Everything is connected. So simple things. William Carlos Williams says, "No ideas, but in things," and what he meant was, take a thing and a solid, tangible thing, and then create out, because everything is connected. So I don't think, my idea is, a lot of people, beginning poets, think that um, one must go to an exalted place or have an exalted experience, but I'm always oh yeah, I always believed that everyday life. So my life, your life, everyone's life, right, is poetry.
But it's not just the life. You focus on people, which is what you do in everything. You organize people, you talk to people, you write about people, and your poems are always about a single
Yeah, a lot of them are.
person.
I'm not, like I say, I'm not. I love people are very fascinating to me. Um, you know, I'm not a particularly adventurous guy, but I love to hear about other people's adventures. And actually, I'm kind of shy. But if I go into the role of interviewer, then my shyness goes away. But my brother is a big time lighting designer, and international lighting design. He goes all over the world. He does all this and that. He's very adventurous. But for me, in the comfort of my home, I can interview, you and other great poets and writers, Dara, and all that, and learn a lot just by sitting in my pedestrian seat here.
That's now that we have Zoom. But before that, you you went around, you interviewed, you organized, you brought people together to poetry readings, not just your own. You organized poetry readings. Uh, that's it's as if all the different things you do come together in that one thing. People, uh, one thing. One,
Well, when I was starting out as a poet, you know, um, I was occasionally getting something published, but I really wanted a community, because I always felt that a community is very important for whatever you do, especially in poetry as well. And so I started a magazine. How else to attract other poets than to start a magazine, right?
Mhm.
And then it's sort of morphed out of that. But before, especially the American conception of poet was he's on the beach in some shack drinking booze and writing verse, and all the individual. But it's really not that way. It's like many aspects of life. You learn from other people, you get connections from other people. So for me, community was just a natural step from being the singular poet to, and it's not it was a lifestyle. The lifestyle also was greatly improved by that. So it becomes a living, or organic thing. So I have many friends who have developed over the years. and enriched my life, I would say, by doing that. Yeah.
And you've helped in their development. And there's,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's you know, some people I have helped. I get thanks from people, and that's always very nice. And so you see people who are just starting out now. They're you know, major poets or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean that of course is gratifying. But character study, as you pointed out, is a big deal for me. Um, because I'm always looking at people and I'm always trying to figure out what they're about. So, anyone in the street is, open game. I worked in a mental hospital for 37 years, and I've written a lot about some of the clients in the mental hospital. McLean Hospital, which, if you're not familiar with, is where your son lives in Belmont, Massachusetts. And in fact, one of our Celia's here, Celia Merlin, who I know her sister, and Celia was here at the Voices of Israel, and Celia's sister worked at McLean. I don't know if she still does. I'm retired myself, but um,
She sends
what
hello.
was it? What's that?
Perry sends hello.
Yeah, is she still working?
She's
Yeah,
not necessarily at McLean's, but she's got her private practice.
wonderful.
And she
So
sends a big
anyway,
hello.
I know she's good woman. So what was I saying? So I worked in the mental hospital, and I've seen things that a lot of people in this wouldn't see in the ordinary life. Raw images, people who have been through the ringer. I've spoken to people who were suicidal, and they might have been a, a a corporate titan, and but if they show their vulnerability, they're ruined in business. I've seen people who are um, uh, who are trying to regain their youth, and they're sort of addled by medications. Grown women holding little stuffed bears, uh, you know um, just for when they're sleeping, just for security at night. Um, you know um, and so these people, as well as other people, have always fascinated me. But being on a locked ward, when I used to run poetry groups and things like that, you were there with them every day, and so you get to know them and the rhythms. Yeah.
some of your poems are really about individual patients, or specific. Maybe you'd like to read a few. If
Oh,
you,
all right, sure. Yeah, sure. Let me just. I should have brought my little.
oh,
Will you excuse me for a minute
I can lend
here?
you my copy.
Hold on for one moment.
I think we're at this moment we're going to stop the recording. Uh, I'm sure that you all have questions, and you'll have questions, and maybe after half an hour or so, uh, we'll open it up totally for questions.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'll get some of my patient poems here. Hold on.
The one about 3 o'clock in the morning is the one that,
You like that one?
for some reason, that one speaks to me.
Let me see if I
All
can
of them.
find it.
Uh,
All right, hold on for a minute.
the patient poems are like where there's no defense. The people have have totally opened up
Mm-hmm.
situation, and I thought that they're very unusual.
Mm-hmm. And now I can't find them. Uh,
It's near the beginning.
the beginning. Oh yes, here we are. Thank you. You know it better than me. Uh, uh, okay. Let's see. Yes, here we go. Let's see.
I put you on the spot here. Uh,
Yeah, no,
but there's
cigarette
about
on the cigarette on the psychiatric
that's a good
cigarette
one.
on the psychiatric ward.
That's a good one.
Is a poem. So I could read that. Okay. Let's just see here. Can I have a light? What was a sudden spark in her eyes? That flame from cloudy dormant pupils when I lit her cigarette. The sudden driving ambition to inhale. The sunken chest's almost beautiful, almost boastful expansion. The smoke filling the yawning cavity. A woman of substance until she exhaled. Oh, cigarettes were used to be, and I don't know to what extent they were, but I mean, people smoked on the wards and, all over the place, and and they were, people really craved them. I think they gave them some relief from what they were going through. Um, let's see another one from
Yeah.
the ward. First night on the psychiatric ward. Yeah, I remember starting there back in 1978 or something around there. Um, and um, and this was the first night I was on the psychiatric ward, and the patient thought that he had made me. He was God, and that he had made me. So this was my first experience with a psychiatric patient. Um, First night on the psychiatric ward. The night seemed perfectly cast. Stormy, thunder and rain. The patient was biblical, long-haired and a beard, with his staff at his command. He put a paternal hand on me and called me his finest creation. What could I do but thank him? He smiled with divine patronization. Undoubtedly, I was a much valued acolyte. Then suddenly a flash from the storm lit the building in a momentary spectral glow. A blast of thunder howled down the lock ward. He looked at me like a proud teacher, patting me on the back. Good work, kid. Good work. So, yeah, those were two poems from the ward. But yeah, you
But
priceless, priceless characters.
Your 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 connection is not great.
Yeah, you don't hear me now?
No, we hear you.
Okay.
Uh, would you like to read some more, or would you like to talk about the other poems? Because
Yeah, uh, there was a period in my life. Um, well, I lost. I had a lot of losses in the last few years. My wife died, and of ovarian cancer, and my mother died. So I've written poems about them, and here's one about my mother when she was dying. Well, she wasn't dying, but she was in her 90s, and um, she wasn't doing that well. So it's called. No, actually, it was when she was dying. I'm sorry. So it's called "Where Is My Pocketbook?" I lived enough. I've done it all. She clutches her pocketbook, a weathered bag to a weathered face. Now it's resting on her deflated breasts. This is unfair. I want to die. The light dims and evening surrenders. She screams shrilly at the institutional walls. Where's my pocketbook? I give it to her. She rifles through the plastic promise of credit cards, the crumbled receipts, the scraps of paper with deceased phone numbers, and the faded stamp of errant lipstick. Her fingers move like an arthritic snake and search for a flimsy thread to hold on. Why must I suffer? Let me go. Where is my pocketbook? Where is my pocketbook? So, it's very poignant to see her, sort of like giving up and saying, let me go, but then again, still yearning for the connection, the pocketbook. And I've had a lot of women of my mother's age who really, um, and maybe younger, who could relate to that. But let's see something else.
Women who
Uh,
cling to their pocketbooks, you mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, this was one with my wife. Not about her dying necessarily. And it's called "We Hold Hands." At dusk, we hold hands. We hold hands with facing tarnished rings, as if some unexpected storm can suddenly separate us forever. We listen to the muted horn, the hint of some heroin-tainted voice. We clink our cocktails, the house cat another appendage between us, and the light grows dimmer, as it always does. Let's see what we have here.
Yeah.
It's interesting just to talk a bit about my background. You might be interested in that.
Very
Um,
much.
yeah, because my grandparents and people of their ilk um, came over from Russia. From the Pale of Settlement and pogroms and all that stuff was a common story. And they all moved. A lot of them moved to the Lower East Side. And my great uncle Henry Kirschenbaum was they started out as book peddlers in the Lower East Side. I remember, he was telling me about the Lower East Side. I said, I said, did you ever meet George Gershwin? He says, yeah, he was a good kid. And who's the Murray Dance Studios, Alfred Murray or something like that. Whatever, it's just these people who were there, and the Lower East Side was amazing. But anyway, Kirschenbaum was selling books, and his brothers were selling books on push carts, and eventually, um, um, you know, um, it morphed into the Carnegie Bookstore in New York City, which was a very famous used bookstore. My Henry, became a huge bookseller, and um, rare dealer in books. He assessed the library of T.S. Eliot. He told me that like he would get a lot of prominent industrialists, corporate people, and they were book lovers. The husbands were book lovers, bibliophiles, and the wives would often say, "One more book, you're out of here." So it would go. They would, they would go. And they would go to my uncle, and he'd get them, he'd get them placed in university libraries and things like that. But he was a very practical man. I mean, which was interesting. He was a businessman, and book was more of a commodity than. I mean, he wasn't he was a very bright guy, but I don't think he was particularly literate. I mean, analytic about literature and things. I said to him, "Why'd you get into books?" And he says, "I had to make a living," so he was very straightforward about it. But he was till I could remember, till he died when he was 96. They had a little plaque for him, and I think it was the table in the Waldorf Astoria or something like that. We threw him a birthday. Because he would eat lunch there every day. He was a creature of habit. And I remember the last time I saw him, he came in with his Hamburg hat, something out of a Singer novel or something like that. And he would, we'd all stand up. He'd sit down at his place at the table, and very old world. And I regret, at the time I was just a young kid, but I regret that I didn't record conversations with him. I think I felt too intimidated because he had that presence about him. But I mean, I think we were always surrounded by books. We got all kinds of rare editions and things of that nature, so it became part of my sensibility. And you know, it all comes from somewhere, doesn't it? You know. And my father was a PR man. He was a madman in the 19, if you know what a madman is, 1950s. And so I have that tendency to promote things. You know what I mean? He was involved in newspapers and he's a very charming man, just like me. A little humor there, but and he was, and he knew how to, you know, talk to people and get things in the newspaper, and it was interesting because in kindergarten, we all wrote little things about my father's a policeman. He helps people. When my father's a fireman, he puts out a fire. And I wrote, my father's an advertising man. He goes to cocktail parties. And what that is. But that, and my mother was very much into the arts also. And um, so, and my brother is a three-time Tony Award winning lighting designer. He started out with the Light King. And I think it was the exposure. My mother kept, we had a little John F. Kennedy, suits, with the hat and the thing, and she would take us into the Leonard Bernstein's young people's concerts and the opera, the opera, so she, I don't know how happy we were listening to the opera, but she took us anyway, and um, so it's all about your upbringing, and I think it was, it's affected profoundly, even though I didn't know it at the time, by these figures. And then when I went on to graduate school, I was searching for my uncle in a way, and I came across Henry Roth, and I did my thesis on Henry Roth, food and the fiction of Henry Roth,
Oh,
and my teacher was a very prominent Yiddish literature person. Her name Weiss.
Ruth,
W.
Ruth
I can't.
Weiss.
Do you know who I mean? You must
Ruth
know. I mean, she's a
Weiss.
major. She worked on the World of Our Fathers and all these things like that. So I brought her. I said, "Look, I want to do food and the fiction of Henry Roth. Traces assimilation by the food he eats." Right? She says, "Well, this sounds kind of trivial. The food. We know food is very important now, but." And so I did it. And she says, "Well, you proved me wrong." So I took from a kid who grew up in this very, you know, people came over from Poland, Eastern Europe, and is trying to assimilate in the culture. Eventually, in the end, he dramatically throws a stinking salami sandwich into the Hudson River and has a nice ham sandwich with his Goyish friends, right? And so I traced it through the whole thing, and it's amazing what you can do through food. But I was looking, and there, I mean, when you're onto something, it's because you're crying, because when you read this, it's so touching to you. And I became, you become enmeshed in this and the music of Yiddish, even though I didn't know Yiddish. My parents knew, I guess they knew it. My parents talked in Yiddish and they would understand it, and or they would talk when they didn't want us to understand something. Um, but I got into this, and I was actually exploring, my own past, and I was trying to, um, uh, you know, um, under, have some understanding of myself. So it was an amazing process, and so
And
that's that on that. Yeah.
that, that's an amazing subject
Uh,
for a thesis. And you write about food too, don't you?
oh yeah, I always liked food. I've written about gefilte fish. I've written about hot dogs. I've written about kishka. I've written about all kinds of foods. I mean, I'm not a fancy eater or anything, but I find for me the best time for me is we're with friends. We get together for dinner, talk. You don't have the goddamn cell phones on, and you just something. There's a bonding about it. And dinner. I don't know anymore in modern households, but dinner. I'm sure you all know is was an important time. You stopped everything, you got together, you sat down, all together and ate. And and I think that tradition, there's a good reason for that. I mean, you know, to keep the familial bonds and all that, and food was a way to, I had the typical grandmother who would say, "Eat, S my kin, S my kin." She'd always want me to eat something, and she'd prepare these huge meals. And it was a form of love, feed, nurture. So,
especially when you come from pogrom world, and where
right.
there's no food, and when you finally get it, you want to give it to everyone.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, I wouldn't say, I would, I'm not a religious Jew, but I was very much a cultural Jew. I mean, I grew up with that.
well, yeah,
And a lot of my,
gastronomical Jew,
huh?
a gastronomical Jew.
Grass. Yeah,
Very
yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The cultural.
yeah, yeah. So that's some of my background. So it's books, my interest in Judaism, my character studies, and so I started the magazine, and then that morphed, and I started interviewing people on a cable show. Then I took over the Newton Free Library series, which is a pretty prominent series here, and then I just started writing for the newspaper in my city of Somerville, and I have a poetry column. Um, uh, I traveled to Israel a while ago, Voices of Israel, um, and I went from, it was an amazing experience for me because here, people were saying, no offense, but people were saying to me, when you when you get to Israel, you'll kiss the floor at Tel Aviv. So when I'm going around Israel, so oh yeah, by the way, a missile just hit here, at this point, and checkpoints, and then I was on a bus, and all these kids had machine guns. They were troops. So I tell people I was amazed on how strong Israeli folks were compared to us Americans. And I said, I'll tell you what, I kissed the ground in Logan Airport in Boston when I got home because it was such a, it was such a, I never, and that, now it's more and more like Israel here in this country. That was before 9/11 and all that stuff. So, um, but that was a great experience also. Um, and yeah, so yeah, I've done all these things. Uh, and I've done them on my own mostly. Um,
The,
you know,
you establish things. I mean,
yeah,
you
establish things.
establish
Yeah,
presses. Uh, you establish a reading series, a interview series. I mean, these are things like when you miss something, you just do it. You make it. Uh, you make it
well,
happen.
yeah, the Bagel Bards actually came about, which is a group of people who meet every Saturday, poets and writers, playwrights. And because I was watching a Woody Allen movie where the comedians would meet at Zabar's or something like that, and they would talk shop or they would talk about their lives, and that's exactly. I said I want to start something like that, and people talking all over, eating, talking, all that stuff, and a lot came out of that. We had anthologies and things like that. But yeah, throughout, as you see that line of community, and if it wasn't for the people I met, I'd be sending out a poem here and there, and that would be it. Um, but and I just wouldn't know about all these different things, and have all these different experiences that I had.
I,
You know?
I was there once. I
Yeah.
went with you to the Bagel Bar,
Uh,
and the whole concept of, first of all, we for some reason we have never had that work here, because people don't have any a specific day when they can get away, and they're not, like if we have Saturday, but you're not free on Saturday because there's no public transportation, and if you're religious, you don't travel, so we don't do that. So we don't have a day where we can all meet, just as you put together. But it seemed like such a fertile place The
Oh yeah,
and and humorous, like just like
yeah,
just like Woody Allen.
right, right. There's all kinds of characters in there, and that what makes it special to me. And it's a place where I still go after 20 years. You know, we started at a Finagle a Bagel in Harvard Square, and now it's in North Cambridge. But you know, and not everyone eats bagels. I have a bagel every day. It says you don't have to eat bagels, you know. And it's great community. I've made many friends. I mean, just you know, my wife was dying of cancer. You know, people came over and helped me, and you know, raised money. I mean, it's amazing.
Sorry.
And you know, the literary stuff that came out of it. You know, so what can I say? You know, literature's not only made. Literature's not only made you know my life interesting. It's just created a life. You know, it created a life.
Amazing. Can I open this up to
Sure.
people in this group, so who will probably
Yeah.
barrage you with questions that I should have asked before?
No.
And they're all almost as nice as the people in the bagel bar.
Good.
So why don't you unmute yourself if you have a question? I'm sure that everyone here wants to send to you their condolences.
Yeah. That was a few years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
And you have a cat.
Kletsma. Yep. Kletsma the cat. He's a great cat. Yeah.
So, okay, so if you have a question, I'll just unmute yourself and Mike, you can start asking.
Okay. It's actually a double question. I ultimately want to ask Doug to read us a poem that he wrote about food, but I wanted first, I know that you wrote a book, Karen, about food talking to you, the food at home.
Yes.
And I thought that maybe if you had a poem handy that you could read about food, it might be interesting, the counterpoint between the two. But if you're not prepared for it, I'd like to, I'm sure you, Doug, that you wrote about food,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'd like to hear how you make it, your take on it, how you make it poetic.
Oh, how do you make? I mean, it's like how you would make anything poetic. I mean,
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
you know, like I say, I start with things. You know,
Yeah.
a can of beans in the street can be poetic. It's how you imagery and you know, line breaks or whatever, the music. So I don't think food is any
No,
exception.
it's obvious to me that it's you that makes it poetic, and
But
Yeah,
you see the poetry.
I do for you. I have a hot dog poem.
Okay, great, great, great. Love to hear it.
And, and this was my late uncle Cy Baum, who was dying, and his last request. You know, he's a Bronx kid. You know, he used to go to Yankee Stadium and all that. And his last request was for a hot dog. Okay.
Wow.
And it's called The Last Hot Dog.
Wow.
Long after he was hungry, it was the last thing he asked for with any appetite. So she brought it to his sick bed. He bit through the red casing, the familiar orgasm of juice hitting the roof of his mouth in some facsimile of his youth. Bites of memory, the summer ballparks, the steam rising from the carts and warm, fragrant clouds against the shock of early spring cold, the mysterious, darkened delicatessens under the elevated tracks, the Bronx gray afternoons dining with his father, the sullen, colorless meals, though the franks fully garnished, the bright yellow and green of mustard and relish. He swallowed hard. It was all too much to digest. A hot
Wow.
dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
Well, you
amazing.
know, Freud said sometimes a cigar is not a cigar. Not just, yeah, right, right. So
Yeah.
sometimes a hot dog is not, you know.
A
Yeah.
hot dog is not a hot dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Could I ask
I-
something?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
Andy.
First of all, I remember, Doug, when you came to the Voices, you were judge of the
Oh, yeah,
reading
yeah, yeah.
weeks. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember
Oh,
when you
wow.
came.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you, at what age did you start writing poetry? At what age did you know you wanted to be a poet?
It's interesting that you asked that. I have a book out years ago. It's called um, "Portrait of an Artist as a Young Poseur," and it's because I think I started out like I was putting beret on, and I thought I was a tragic character, a little thing around my neck, and I was posturing as a poet, and living in Boston, posturing as this tragic poet, and I think I did. As you start doing it so long, you become what you posture at. I think a lot, and for some reason, I picked a posture about that, and I knew I had the sense that I was a poet. I was keeping little journals and snippets of writing that I liked for many years. Even back in the '70s when I was living in a rooming house in Boston right after college, and I can't tell you what I I just viewed the world if you could believe it, as beautifully tragic, and I couldn't stand the banality. I not that I just couldn't believe that the world would be just so banal. There's all this stuff going on behind it, and people tend to put it away or don't stop to look at it. So I knew instinctively that I wanted to um, do that. And so, I didn't really, I'm 68 now, but I didn't publish my first poem till I was uh, 36. But I was writing um, poetry and sort of preparing to be a poet, not consciously, but just by keeping these journals, writing, reflecting, putting in small poems and things like that. Um, but it just seemed natural for me. I mean, it's just the way my mind went. I mean, I could have been an accountant. Nothing wrong with an accountant, but I don't have. It's just for some reason, even though it seemed impractical, my parents were worried. As they, go to law school and be a doctor and all this stuff. But it wasn't for me. So I did what I wanted to do, and my brother, for instance. He had a good job in business, but he was also a lighting designer. He quit his job in business and went for a very low paid position in the arts, and now he became an artist. Lighting design, Lion King, and all that stuff.
Wow.
So I guess it's something runs in our blood. I mean, there was a lot of artists in our family, and guys who drifted around. I guess you would call them Luftmensch. Someone who drifts around and dabbles in this and just sort of. And so I haven't I've lived, I guess I could say, a bohemian life my whole life. Most of my peers are you know ensconced in the suburbs with kids, and that's great and all that. I've sort of just lived like me and my wife, we live like a perpetual graduate students. And of course, I wish I had a house now, the way everything's rising and everything. But I get by, and I do what I want. You know.
And so your poetry is your profession. Is that
Well, yeah, I mean, I teach to make a living. I was working in a mental hospital for many years. I was always working. I was working, 3 jobs at times. So, it's not like I was like, just saying I'm too pure to work. I had to work. I had to make a living, as my uncle said. But I would always, but I think I chose jobs like when I was a mental health worker and things like that, where you didn't bring home a lot of work. You had to work hard, but you didn't bring home a lot of work, and you know, um, a place like McLean provided some tuition help, and I was going to Harvard at night, and so I would work all day and then go to night school, um, um, and it was it was just at first I was posturing, but then it became part of me, like I said. Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, you're so modest. Nobody mentioned your work with the University of Buffalo.
Oh, yes. Well, you grew up in Buffalo. I know you and
Yeah,
your
I
sister.
went to the university there, and you worked on the library there. There's a whole. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about what you did with the University of Buffalo Library?
Well, I mean, I didn't do, so to speak, do that. They have a Doug Holder paper collection there, where a lot of my tapes and tapes of poets and correspondence with other poets are housed there. I was very good friends. It's invaluable. That library in the University of Buffalo is invaluable. They have a small press and rare books collection. Michael Basinski used to run it. And I met him, and he says, "Yeah, what take poetry books?" I would think the most complete collection of our poetry books and things are at the University of Buffalo. And by the way, if you have poetry books, they'll be very interested for you to have in their collection. So, but I mean, they did say, I said to them, "Look, I've been doing this for all the stuff I've collected. I got to get it out of the house, and how about a collection?" And and they said, "Sure," and so yeah, Buffalo,
so
Buffalo is a great is great literary community.
Very nice.
And I know Karen went to. Was that?
Oh, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, different topic that you mentioned with loss, and I'm wondering, because many of us are going through different periods of loss, parents, especially in Israel now.
Right.
Do you find that you turn to writing to help you with loss, or is it something that is bigger than you and you just have to do it? And does it help you? One last thing, because you mentioned crying. After you write a poem with loss, do you have the feeling of, oh, I needed to say that?
Thanks. I needed that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So all I know is, well, for instance, when my mother died, I was thinking about it. It was churning in my head, and so suddenly I sort of got into this sort of davening motion. Mother, 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 and and um, and from there, the poem, came out about my mother, 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 and I think, I mean, I don't go about writing poetry for it to be cathartic, but um, when you're in that poetic high or whatever, that poetic run, um, something mystical about it, something that you can't explain, nor do you want to explain.
Right.
You just want to go with it. Yeah.
I
Yes.
have a question also. Karen,
Yes, go
please
ahead.
jump in. Okay. Thanks. It's been such an interesting conversation. Doug, I really appreciate your focus in your poetry on the everyday, on the particular, on the moment. And my question is this. Can you talk to us about how to elevate those particulars so that the effect is more resonant, is more universal?
Particulars of, like,
well, whatever the particulars are, whether it's a person or a moment, etc. But to be
okay.
able to elevate that or have it resonate so that, it's not locked just into that moment, that it touches other people who are reading it, that it connects. Because,
Right.
sometimes when you read material that's very particular, it's just locked into that frame and it doesn't resonate out. So my question is just to talk about it. Yeah, thank you.
Um, poetry is an art, right? It is an
Sure.
art, and some people are gonna, be able to resonate better than others. So, like I say, it's not like, I mean, you can learn poetry and be a competent poet, I think. Um, I mean, I really think, I think you have to live a little also. Yeah, you really, I mean, because I mean, there are, like what it was, Keats was like 16 or something. But I mean, you really got to be able. I mean, I don't think I was really writing maturely until I was at least in my 40s, at least. So, I mean, you have to have
Mhm.
some life experience, and I think because that gives you the empathy.
Yeah.
All I can say is that, although you still, I mean, I'm not stopping young poets or anything like that. I'm just giving you my personal thing on this. I mean, a lot of
Sure.
there's great young poets out there, but what I was saying was, for instance, I was sitting in Harvard Square at a Starbucks, and I just noticed this guy next to me had a lottery ticket, and he sort of looked like he's gone to sea, seen better times. And so I'm looking at this. Was just a simple lottery ticket, and he's scratching at it furiously,
Yeah.
and so I'm saying, what's this, what's this guy's life about? He's,
Yeah.
this is his last chance, or something like that. He's trying to get out of the squalor. He goes to the bathroom, and then he comes back, or wherever he goes, he comes back with another, another lottery tickets. I say,
That's
this guy is only scratching at the surface, and
literally.
so yeah, literally scratching at the surface. So I mean, I think you really got to intensely, concentrate. I mean, you see that image. I could walk around for months and not have that image, but if it hits you, it resonates.
Mm.
Then you go back to it and think intensely about it,
Mhm.
and play with words, and
Mhm.
read it out loud to your partner or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
It's
you
that
know,
intensity. It's that
Yeah.
intensity that you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
transmit when you have to feel it very deeply.
Right.
absolutely.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean, so that's why it's hard to say how does one do it. But like anything, you want to have a passion about what you write, and then that naturally comes through. I had a kid. I said, look, tell my kids, when I was teaching composition, you want to write something you're passionate about. So a kid comes up and, because then you'll write well, and the kid comes up, wants to write about nail care, well, I said, are you that much into nail care? I mean, is that this? He says, yes, I'm into nail care. So the next thing she brings the essay in, and it's about, well, ladies, before that date, you got to get the cuticles right, and it was plagiarized from a how-to thing. But my point being is that I think the best way is just, yeah, you have a passion for something. I can't write on demand like Joey's bar mitzvah, or
Yeah.
something like that. But I
Agree.
think if I have a passion for something, and it's based on your unique sensibility, you know.
Uh,
I'd like to ask you
Sarah,
something.
can
Sorry.
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Becky,
You have contact with young people, and I'd like to know, um, how do you feel about what the writing today? Do you feel a big gap between your generation and what people
Hmm.
are writing today? Does it resonate with you the way the poetry of your contemporaries?
Well, as Billy Wilson sang in, what was the movie again? No, Casablanca. It's still the same old story. The they're still writing about love and death and all that good stuff. I mean, well, it's good in the sense that it's all part of life. Um, when I went to college in the 70s, we read books, and now they're more, reading a book is not like it was when I was a kid. And they're using, a lot of digital stuff. Um, I think because I teach a lot of novice poets. I've never taught grad school or anything like that, nor would I want to. But you know, one thing I tell the kids is, because when they start out, they write very politely, you know, and I said, look, if you're going to write, and they're frightened, you know, they're frightened to write, they want to be a good kid and all this stuff. Um, Not like Alan Kaufman, my pal, but uh, but so I said, look, if you're writing about, mom in her gingham dress, and you're going down to the creek and then coming back for oatmeal cookies, I mean, you're not really bleeding at all. You're not bleeding. You're not having the conflict. So what I try to get them to do is again, the passion, to try to get them to write about something that reveals something about them that, I mean, in all kinds of writing that I teach, I said, there's not, not everyone is a beautiful blonde and a broad-shouldered male. I mean, there are bald guys, older guys with beards and stuff like that. Not everyone's perfect. You have to embrace the flaws, or it's going to sound phony. And I think that's the challenge, to get them, from away from what feels comfortable, to get out of, and not unreasonably so, but to get out of their comfort zone. But kids are kids. I mean, what we and I mean, I think they have the same themes that we dealt with when we were kids. It's just it's a different environment now, So I mean, I'm not gonna, I would not say these kids today, they don't know anything. I mean, they were, because they were doing that to me when I was a kid. No, they're bright kids. They have a different world than we grew up in, and they have different ways of gaining information and things like that. So I think kids are great, and they do the best they can, and it's a very confusing world out there.
Can I ask you a question?
Sorry.
Yeah, Hillel, and then Steve. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Hillel.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
And I'm a transplanted Brooklynite in Tel Aviv. Of course, Yankee Stadium was the hated Yankee Stadium. And I was wondering if you've written any baseball poems. You're now in the Boston area, and basically the question of American themes, which baseball is one of them.
Glad that you asked that. I did when I was like 14, and I was a I was just crazy about the New York Mets, the Miracle Mets, and I wrote a poem about Shea Stadium. And I mean, talk about passion. And then I thought, why? There's got to be a deeper reason behind the passion. And I think I was 14 or 15, 16, whatever. What was 1969? I was only, wait a minute, 1969. So I was like 14 years old, and I'm very confused about the world. I still am. Things haven't changed, but baseball seemed to provide an order. There's first base, second. You do this right, first base, second base, third base. They had the young rookies, the old guys. And they were, they were all respected in their own right. It sort of made sense of the chaos of the world.
Oh.
It was structured. And it also, also is tradition. My father, he saw Babe Ruth, and he was in the Bronx. He saw Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and all that. And I remember he told me I was such a Yankees fan, that I remember throwing a radio outside my tenement window when they lost or something like that. So, and it's just it's just a metaphor for life, like a lot of things are. Yeah.
We have a whole list of questions. Stephen, then Judith, and there may be more. So I'm gonna just move things along. Steve.
Hi, Doug. I'm
Hi.
I'm a Boston guy. I grew up
Oh, are you?
there. Yeah, and taught in Vermont, and and I just had one question. Did you ever know Old Man Grolier in the Grolier bookshop?
Oh, I mean, Carney, Andrew Carney?
Yes.
Yeah. Carney, right, yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't know him, but I know people who did, and I knew very well now I can't remember her name, the woman who ran it after him, Louise Solano.
So
Yeah, and but I heard he was quite a character, and you know, he just a pile of books right up, and you know, in a pile, and he could be cranky, and he was it was a place to be. You know, people would come in there, or great poets,
I used
Lowell's and
to
everything.
live there after
Oh,
graduating college and pretending I was a grad student at Harvard, going in and out of classes. I'd wind up in Grolier's bookshop, and he eventually granted me a, you know, a I forgot what he called it. What?
plaque. He gave you a plaque.
No, he gave me an account. You
oh,
know, an account. Credit count, but you never had to pay, you know. And I met a lot of incredible poets there. But I was just wondering,
well, actually, this woman, friend of mine who I met, Olivia Huang, she did a documentary that I was in, which is a talking head about the Grolier Poetry Bookshop. It's the world's, I can't remember the title of it, but her name is Olivia Huang, Huang, if you wanted to look up her documentary. And at the time, after Louisa Solano died, it was the Grolier was given to Ifeanyi Menkitti, who was a professor of philosophy at Wellesley. He took it over, and he died, and now the family runs it. It's still there, and you know, and it's still thriving, you know, and they have readings there all the time, and all that stuff.
That's good.
Oh,
yeah. I was curious, and I miss Boston, especially in these days. But
yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Judith, you had a question.
Yes. I looked at a number of things. First of all, thank you very much for the things you have been saying and you said. And I looked at a number of things you have done, and then I looked at the Ibbotson Street Press requirements for poetry, and I found it very interesting, and I just wanted to ask you what's your take on it. It says, I'm reading now. We look for poetry that is not too abstract. We look for simplicity, economy of words, that's quite clear for me, something that speaks to all of us. The poetry should have layers of meaning and be strongly situated in the everyday. Now, of course, in my view, there is a little bit of contradiction here, but why would you say that? How do you think about poetry if you say that we don't want it to be too abstract? You know, that would certainly exclude Hafez, Rumi, Baudelaire, Mallarmé, Naili, easily Sutskever. And then I want to connect this to another very interesting thing. I heard an interview with Jacques Brel.
With who?
Chanson writer.
Yeah.
Belgian, French chanson writer. And he was very much against this new trend that students are analyzing his songs as poetry. And he said, I'm not writing poetry, I'm writing song texts. And the difference is that poetry is abstract and it works with metaphors. And the song text is immediate.
Well, Bob Dylan won the Nobel.
What is your take on all this?
Well, Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize in Literature. He's a songwriter, so for
I know.
So, yeah.
Well, you can win the Nobel Prize with anything, but
what do I mean? Is that too much to ask? And that's no. What do I mean? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Someone wanted to say something?
I wasn't.
No, okay.
Doing anything.
Wait,
everyone has their
unmute
own.
you. Let me unmute you. You
Everyone,
have to unmute yourself.
yeah.
But you have muted yourself. So I see someone talking, but I don't. But she's muted. So you have a silent question.
You.
Oh, here
Now
you
I'm
are.
unmuted. Now,
Oh, you're unmuted. Yes.
yes. I have a question. First of all,
I didn't finish the question with the other
but
lady. So, yeah.
it's only because I barge in like that before it goes away again. It keeps
Well,
going away.
all
So
right. Well,
I'll keep.
I mean, I wanted to answer the question by the lady there, and then I can come to you. So, yeah, right. Abstract. We all have our styles. There are language school poets and things like that. When I mean too abstract, I mean I don't like poetry that is, that you can't grab onto something like Jury Graham, great poet, but it's not my style. You see what my work is like. It has an economy of words. Each word I hope counts. This is me. This is my style. It's my magazine. This is what I'm looking for. Oh, there are always poets who are going to be excluded. It's just the nature of the beast. But when I'm asking, but basically, I've tried. I wrote that a long time ago. Auden said a poem works for him when it makes him cut himself while shaving. And that's basically the deal. You would send me a poem, and he said, this is an abstraction. I suddenly, but I see, tangible images, and it's affecting me emotionally, and I cut myself while I'm shaving. That's a good poem. I know it when I see it, and that's Doug Holder. And people don't like my poetry. A lot of people don't like my poetry. They might say it's too simplistic or it's too, bare boned, and others think it's great. So I mean, my magazine is sort of. You're right. My magazine is my sense. It has. I started it with my sensibility, and that's my sensibility in poetries. So that's
Oh,
all I
I
can say.
wasn't asking that. I was just
Yeah.
really asking what you really mean by abstract in poetry. I wasn't.
You have to ask such difficult questions.
Yes, I know. But that was basically I was asking.
Yeah.
Because to me, many things in your poetry is abstract. So I'm asking this question, then how do you define something that's as opposed to simple, or I don't know.
It's hard to define it. But to me, if I can't, you see, it gets back to me again. If I can't give you the definition that you want, but for me, if I can't, if there's something there that I can't grab on, that's something tangible, and it's just words that, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And for me, that's too abstract. But I mean, that's a broad, I mean, metaphors don't have to be particularly, I mean, I love metaphor. I'm not saying I don't like metaphor or all the symbolism and all this stuff, of course, but,
We're almost finished.
Can I now?
I'm off.
Please.
Yes, you may speak. Yes.
It's
I hope I answered your question, but I know I sort of.
But first of all, I enjoy so much the conversation and listening to you. But secondly, I have a question here. I have here in a page, it's 78, number 78. It says it's from a publication. You gave this poem to me years and years ago. And I wrote it down that you even won a Reuben Rose prize, and it's by Doug Holder, and it has a quite unfortunate title. But you hold your horses, and I didn't write it. Dig up my dying dig. Rise up my dying dig. Do you remember a thing like that?
No. I'm
No?
sorry. No.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry.
But because I have it here, and you wrote it to me, and
What is it called again?
rise up, my dying Dick.
My dying who?
Dick.
Dick.
You mean like a dick?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's certainly a worthy poem, but I don't remember writing it. Maybe
I have it.
maybe I did.
I have it for years, and I saw my
I don't remember writing that. I don't have many Schwanz poems.
I think
but,
it was to
yeah.
Richard Nixon. It was Richard in honor of Richard Nixon.
But if it gives you happiness, I applaud it.
I don't care. I didn't write it, but I saw this opportunity to ask you face to
I don't remember. It's possible that I did.
Okay. Okay.
It's possible.
Thank you.
I don't remember.
I most probably disappear again because it flickers on and off. I don't know why, but
No.
that said somewhere that my host mutes me, but it's
Don't
not.
worry about it. I mean, like, the long lost works of Doug Holder.
So okay, I won't keep you anymore.
All right.
I hear a lot of interesting and things, and I say take it in. I know.
Good for you. That's good. Yeah.
Mental remark, and thank you.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you for your work. And yeah.
That's a line we'll never forget. And Anne has a question.
Yeah.
And I think will be
okay.
Final.
Okay. Hi. I
Hi.
have a technical question. You spoke before about writing things that you feel passionately about, but there is also this school of thought that says that you have to prime the pump, that you have to get up every morning at 4 a.m. and sit down at your desk and write whether you feel like writing or not. And, do you have any opinions about that?
Yeah, I don't
do
believe
you do that thing?
I don't. I don't, get up and say, if there are people who do it and it works for them, everyone has their own method. I have to have something come to me, and then I know I want to write about it. But, I am actually up very early in the morning because I'm grading papers. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But not necessarily to write poetry. I think, if you have to find your own method. For instance, I love writing in coffee shops. Oh, my cats. I like writing in coffee shops, and for some reason the ambient noise and whatever is helpful. But yeah, I mean, whatever gets you through the night. That's my saying. Yeah.
Okay.
I tried I just add, I tried Homo, which is where you have to join everyone and write a poem every day for a month.
Yeah.
Tried it, I almost had a nervous breakdown.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean,
exactly the kind of thing that turns me off. I mean, it turns my poetry off. And I wonder, Doug, maybe that's the way it is for you.
I can't write that way. That's just me. But I know people who it works for very well. So, yeah.
Okay. So I don't have to feel guilty. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and Doug. I think we've worn you out.
I'm always. It's a pleasure.
We've enjoyed it very much. I'd love to have you back. But I really thought that you have so much to give, and you give so much that we really needed to hear about all the things that you do.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
And we do too. So I hope we will see you again soon. I think that we have exhausted the questions, and I'm so glad that we had this chance to talk There's so much that you you kind of encourage, you bring up. I'm sure that everyone's going to come back to me and say, why don't we do
Please read more.
doing this?
Please read before you leave us. Please read something else.
He did. Yeah, Michael, he read a few poems. And maybe Doug, would you like to read some of your
Yeah, sure.
from
Hey, listen, that's great. I mean, it's interesting. You don't think of yourself with these perspective, but when people ask you questions about your life and things like that, you sort of gain a different perspective, and things like that. You know what I mean? Just by something, but all right, let's see. Okay. Well, I talked to you about how I read a lot about urban things, and I'm attracted to people and different things. So this poem is I Don't Know Why. I don't know why I have visions of elevated tracks, subways defiantly roaring at the dark, damaged men pawning costume jewelry for cheap redemption, legless men on wheeled carts. Can you spare Finn? After all, he was a former choir boy. The patrician slap of the old gray lady on the pavement outside the newsstand. A sign on a city street, Sig Klein's Fat Man Shop. Men in black overcoats, clandestine girth hidden beneath their draping body armor. The sliding shot glass over the polished wood. Monk straight no chaser in the background. The summer street. A kid throws his radio out of a Bronx tenement window. The Yankees went south in the 10th. A man at Ratner's whose life has been reduced to yelling at a round-shouldered waiter. You call that a pickle? The neon's ironic wink and his sound and fury all the sound and fury must signify something. That's an interesting thing about Ratner's, because I was living on Long Island. My parents were from the Bronx, but it was sort of like, fascinating old world. And I had a friend of mine who was old world, kind of Brooklyn guy, and he'd bring us kids to Ratner's, and I guess he had this ritual in Ratner's. The guy would, put out the onion rolls, and put out the pickles. And my friend's father said to him, "You call these pickles? You call these pickles?" And they would get into this sort of argument. And I imagine that it went on for years, like just this sort of ritual between the waiter and the well, here's a final one about my mother. Actually, my mother and I had our problems over the years, strained and
Where are you?
huh?
Where are you?
He's here. He's here. He's behind his book.
I'm behind my book. Yeah, I was trying to. I'm trying to find that poem, but now it's sort of it's sort of a loser. Yeah. So anyway, my mother and I, and I'm sure as mothers, you have your good and bad times with kids, and but toward the end of her life, I tried to, we connected better. I tried to connect better with her, and so I was on a train going from my brother's house in upstate New York to Manhattan, and I was sitting with my mother, and she said, "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold. I'm depressed. I'm old." I held her hand. "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold." She said, "Maybe I pushed too much. Maybe I gave in much too soon. Perhaps it was something I needed to be told." I held her hand. "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold." I said, "But we love you. One was once bought, now has been so long sold." I held her hand. "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold." She said, "What should I have seen? What was I meant to be? What would have pleasured me?" I held her hand. "Too bad," she said. "It's warm now. but oh so old. Her hand gently broke from me, and like spotted moths, fluttered free. That's what about my mother. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for these beautiful poems. Thank you for asking for it, Michael, because we're going to sign off now, and it's wonderful to see you all. And
thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you, and I'm going to go
Thank you
read your
very
poetry.
And we'll see you again, and I'm sure that everyone's going to buy it on Kindle.
We'll meet again, right? As the song
We'll
goes.
meet again, yes. Don't know where,
Okay.
don't know when. I'll meet you in Boston.
All right. I'll look forward to that.
See you then.
Hi,
Okay.
Ricky.
Good night.
Hi, Ricky.
Thank
Ricky
you.
Friesen, hi.
Who's saying hi?
It's me, Birgit.